This is the Get a Life podcast. Ex-Cult Conversations.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Get a Life podcast, Ex-Cult Conversations. We are here today with Carmen, Lane, and Peter, and we are going to dive into the Sydney seminar that just happened in early 2023 that had been postponed from December. Obviously, we received the recordings of it. I'm sorry, Bruce, but we're all working as a one unit, whether you like it or not. So most of us have gone through the transcript, and we're going to discuss it and inform everyone what went on through it and where their heads are at inside there, and correct a few of their mistakes. And to start us off is going to be Peter's going to give us a brief overview. Take it away, Peter.
Okay, so the Sydney seminar was held in Sydney, I understand, and people can pay an exorbitant price and go to some meeting place over there and see it in person, and it's also televised around the world by way of Zoom. And every household is expected to look at it, every person. They start off with it, so it's split into two. There's a family seminar and then there's a business seminar. They start off by saying, today we are going to be hearing a lot of experiences from brothers from around the globe of their contact with these great men over many years. And they say there is an overarching theme running through today's session on how we can become more efficient and effective. So it's all about efficiency and effectiveness, which of course is a reference back to the 60s, the system days, which they're still going on about. And there will be some excellent advice for all ages. So there's a good sales pitch going on here. So people feel good about paying their $800 per person or whatever terrible price they're paying for this. And so they have several older brothers speaking about their experiences with the so-called great men. There's over half an hour filled with listening to older men speak of their experiences from JD Senior. That's as far back as they can go. And it sort of reminded me of like where I came from. We were often encouraged to speak in the breaks about what our experiences were with the great men, when we had them in our houses or when we spoke to them after the meeting or whatever. And so, we heard the same story time and time again because then it got particularly boring, of course.
I remember hearing those stories as a kid. So what he says a break, what he means for our listeners is, so on Sundays and big church gatherings, they would assign families out to another brethren member's house, a local brethren member, and you would eat a meal there, or you'd have dinner or lunch there, and they'd call it a break on Sunday. And the conversations around the living room were always had to be, really spiritual and religious in a way. And a lot of the times it was these older brethren felt obligated to tell these same stories over and over about these ancient guys that were long since dead and the young people. And as a kid, I'm telling you, it was really boring. You just didn't care. Like my uncle would go on about one of the, Symington said something about not having 4-wheel drive, and things like that. Sorry, Peter, but I just want to paint the picture a little.
Yeah, no, that's good. And so these older brothers talk for ages about little details and things they remember. He saw JT after JT had taken meetings at some church in London, and he saw JT by himself at a bus stop, waiting for a bus, and he was standing there by himself, and that was a terrible thing because such a great man shouldn't be at a bus stop by himself. And all these little snippets of information which people sit there with their mouths wide open.
we were supposed to glean something from that, right? It was supposed
That's
to
right,
be
yeah.
super meaningful.
Yeah. All these awesome stories. And then they get little interesting little snippets in there. Like he said, one person said, their influence inspired committals to purity, systematically reading the ministry and managing our time. But in 1966, when JSH and WBH became discredited, so that's when those two brothers, Bruce Hales Sr. and John Hales, were kicked out because they were bringing in the system days. They were treating the brethren very badly, but he used the word became discredited. So there they are, reviving the system days again, bringing back this great theme of using our time efficiently. So that's what this business seminar and family seminar is all about. It's about using your time efficiently and basically cramming as much time as you can into a day. I mean, we'll roll into that later on. This first half hour is spent with just all these clips about all these bits of information about the great men. Yeah, so, and then it goes on. After that, there's a break. And then we hear from brethren in Sydney, mostly Hales, the younger Hales generation. That's Bruce Hales's generation and going down. So Bruce Hales's cousins and then his sons and their cousins, and how they stayed with John Hales when family members were kicked out of fellowship, and they also stayed with Bruce Hales when Bruce Hales was only newly married. He had quite a few boys staying with him, his cousins, and all these stories about Bruce Hales, and they're telling all these stories.
So this is in the seminar. They're basically the seminar that Bruce Hales has mandated that all the members across the brethren listen to and have to pay for, is then blowing up him and painting how amazing he is.
Oh yeah, of course. I mean, the thing about it is anyone could spend half an hour, well, probably not half an hour, but they could spend quite a few minutes saying a whole lot of nice things about me, for instance. But they could also spend a long time talking about all the horrible things I did too. But this seminar is just about all the good things Bruce did and all the good things these great men did. And
someone told me after listening to it that's inside right now, they told me that everything was stuff that they've heard a million times before. And it's funny because you were mentioning that, I haven't listened to all of it, but it's funny you mentioned the time management stuff because they were preaching that years ago too.
Yeah, it's all regurgitated. And some of these older brothers that spoke in the first part of the seminar, that they're new names that I hadn't heard before. I've been out for 2.5 years, and they're people speaking that I hadn't heard before. So they're digging around trying to find fresh stories, and a lot of it's stuff that I have heard before. So they're scraping around trying to find new stuff. And when they're talking about staying with Bruce Hales, and a lot of that stuff they're talking about is stuff I had heard before, and of course out of Bruce's mouth because he speaks about himself a lot of the time.
That's what cult leaders do.
Sorry?
That's what cult leaders do. They always talk about themselves.
And then they went on to talk about goals. And one of Bruce Hales's nephews is talking about goals and how he talked to Bruce Hales's dad, John Hales, about his goals. He had 5 goals, and I just noticed in that he talked about, well, one of the goals has been a high achiever, which is here we go again, high achieving. And he had all these goals, but I noticed not one of the goals was a spiritual goal or a goal to be more like Jesus. It was all these sort of, like, if you like, earthly goals. One of the goals was to read more, which of course was reading the ministries. but in their reading is like it's a goal, but that doesn't make you more. It's supposed to make you more spiritual, but in my experience, the people that read the most were the biggest assholes there were. I mean,
Well, it's because of what they're reading.
Sorry?
It's because of what they're reading, right? Like if you spend your whole life reading the most boring crap coming out of uneducated people's mouths, like the men of God, then yeah, you're. But if you read interesting books, right? Like one of the biggest things I love since leaving the Brethren was opening my mind by reading books, nonfiction and fiction, right? And realizing that the Brethren didn't allow that, right? They didn't allow you to read novels. They didn't allow you to read books on consciousness or science books and stuff. You're only supposed to read the Bible or this ministry, which was just printed bullshit.
Yeah, well, it's partly what you say, but it's also that it made their head big. It's because they read so much, they thought they were better.
Oh,
and
yeah,
they were more knowledgeable.
Mhm, mhm.
Yeah.
And so they didn't develop people skills or empathy and those sort of things. And they weren't becoming more like Jesus. They were just becoming harder to get on with.
Yeah, I would still say it's because of the quality of what they were reading.
And then so that was the people seminar, basically. I mean, we'll go into a whole lot more detail about that. Sorry, the household seminar. So basically the household seminar was talking about the great men and putting Bruce up on a pedestal higher up. And then they came to the business seminar. And the business seminar, I mean, the Brethren, as we know, the Brethren always have a sort of a saying that excuses what they do. And my impression of the business seminar, the saying for the business seminar is touching things more lightly. So, you know, that they referred to that several times. This is all in view of touching things more lightly. So they say that they're touching things more lightly, and then they get into the depths of business. And they say that saying, and then they go straight into the next sentence. They're talking about ruthless lead qualification and absolute relentless focus and they speak about obtaining top talent from one of our competitors. In other words, just going to your competitors' staff and stealing them from them in view of knocking your competitors down and stealing their market share and that sort of thing. Very unchristian things.
Unethical business practices.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. The sort of thing a decent Christian wouldn't do, but all these things.
No, a decent human shouldn't do.
That's right. Yeah. All these things in view of touching things more lightly. And of course, the Brethren sit there sucking it all up because it's a very spiritual thing to touch things more lightly and become more heavenly minded.
It's nonsensical rhetoric, or is it rhetoric? I don't know. But it's nonsensical. It just touch things lightly. They bastardize the English language. That's what they do. They bastardize the English language.
So the business seminar, part of it was all stuff I've heard before, except this one had a new thing to it this year, what they call PE or private equity, where they're talking about selling part of their business or all of their business to an outside firm by some elaborate legal means.
My brother talked about that, Jim.
Yeah.
And Jim, I hope you're listening. It's called in the normal world, it's called a pump and dump, where you pump up a company and then you try and sell it to investors for maximum profit. Okay, it's called a pump and dump. You guys aren't new and inventing something. This has been around for a very long time, and it's completely unethical and is a scam.
And it's something that John Hales, Bruce Hales' father, who was a whole lot more conservative than Bruce, I mean, he was still really into business, but he was a much more conservative and should I say, honest, I guess, than Bruce, would have absolutely dumped Bruce about. He would have been real angry with Bruce if he knew this was going on. But
I don't want to give John Hales too much credit, because John Hales found out about a bunch of young children getting kicked out of Maple Creek Church and said it was all awful, and he cried about it and was upset about it, but he didn't do shit about it. He didn't do nothing.
Oh yeah, I realize that. Yeah. But I'm just saying John Hales wouldn't have gone along with this.
No, John was definitely more religious and spiritual than Bruce. It doesn't carry. He's just more business.
Yeah, but the fact that, I mean, most of the brethren would know that John Hales wouldn't go along with this, but they just turn a blind eye to that because Bruce is going along with it.
Yeah, they used the turn the corner thing, right? Jesus turned another corner.
That's right. Yeah. But to hear them spend the first day of the seminar talking about the great men and all this stuff supposed to be spiritual, and then the second day they're right into business, right into the putting their heart and soul into money making. They just look so stupid. I don't think they realize how stupid they look.
Yes,
thank you. You put it perfectly.
I have to say that was my biggest thing in sitting there listening to it. Was it did not feel like you were sitting down and listening to a seminar from a Christian group. That's for sure. I mean, I don't know how many people have watched the FLDS series and movies and stuff, but that's literally what this is like, right? It's this pumping up of all the leaders in order to get their flock underneath them to be more efficient and do more in every way, shape, and form.
Yeah, absolutely. This being more efficient, this high achiever thing has been going on for quite a few years now. Probably about 5 years ago or 4 years ago, we had a business seminar in New Zealand. It was like I think it was an Australasian-wide business seminar where they had the All Blacks coach was one of the speakers, and all these brethren from all over Australasia went to this business seminar in Auckland. And then that night, all the brethren come home again. And that night, what happens is someone in the meeting is asked to take a reading that was at the business seminar. I don't know why, but that's just what happens. And so this brother took the meeting, and the meeting was about high achieving, if you will. And I thought to myself, how stupid. I mean, is that old lady out the back there, is she really interested in a meeting about high achieving? It's just, is this a church or what?
And you know what? I guess that's where I get really frustrated when they have their spokesperson comes back in response to all these news media and the articles that are being written. And I mean, they've stated over and over again that their businesses have nothing to do with their church, that they're two separate things, which we know that that's absolutely a lie. It's not true. And I mean, going through and listening to this seminar, it just proves, we have proof over and over and over and over that everything that they remark back to these articles and news media outlets is absolutely false. Absolutely false.
And I want to attack something that they push out there, that they pushed even when I was still in 2007, 8, time management and breaking your day down into like sections of 50. Hi, Richard. Welcome to the show.
Sorry, been a bit
breaking. That's all good. Breaking your times down into 50-minute blocks, knowing and just maximizing your day's efforts to achieve business goals, which gives you more money, which then gives you more power, which is gonna equal what? Where are you going with this? That's what I'm asking you, insiders that are buying into this rhetoric from Bruce Hales. Where are you going with this success? When you have $50 million now, you can't buy a house with a pool still. You still can't fly to Bali. You still can't go to a concert. You still can't even buy a Lamborghini. What are you going to buy? A Land Rover is your maximum that you can buy. You can't even enjoy it. So the point I'm getting to is no matter how successful you become and you think that success equals money, when you think that, you will never be happy. There is no happiness at the end of chasing business dreams and becoming financially a billionaire or whatever it is you want. When you meditate, you actually learn to slow your thoughts down. And do you know what meditation is? It's the opposite of what Bruce Hales is teaching you. It's learning to waste your time in the most beautiful way ever. You calm yourself, your thoughts slow down. You start realizing that every thought is just a thought. It's like sitting on the side of the road. Imagine you're sitting on the side of the road and you're watching traffic fly by, right? And those are your thoughts. And you realize that, oh, wow, there's a Lamborghini coming. It's a really, wow, that's awesome. That's like a really important thought, right? But you don't run out into traffic and try and get into the car, right? You'll get hurt. So just learn to waste your time. Don't waste your life building a business that isn't going to make you happy. It's not. Spending time with the people you love and doing the things you love. That's what'll make you happy. That's my rant.
Where they're going with high achieving is they have no time to think. That's what it's about.
Very good point. Very good point.
I agree.
Yeah, if you can take up all your time, you're reading the ministry, if you can take up all your time being at the business and then the rest of your time being at church, you will literally have no time to enjoy actually being alive and all that there is to enjoy in life.
And no time to spend with your children.
No.
Exactly.
And I mean, in the seminar, it does go through that. They've gotten through different speakers and through different parts of it where they do really dive into getting up at 5 a.m., where they talk about how many hours of sleep you need, right? 6 hours, what was it? 6 hours for men, 7 hours for women, and 8 hours for pigs, because we needed to know how many hours of sleep a pig needs. But all of it throughout the whole seminar is very much where they're segregating throughout your day, where you have to be held accountable for what you're doing within your time. Yeah, it keeps you busy, keeps them very busy. Yeah.
Yeah. And like apparently BDH bragged about being able to take a 3-minute shower and shave. It's like, okay, cool, buddy. Are you in basic training or something? Like, what are you trying to achieve? Do you have a sergeant waiting for you? Because I don't think so. Like, unless you're doing it for environmental reasons, then good, bravo. But
obviously, personal hygiene is very, very low down their priorities.
Yeah, but Bruce Hales doesn't have body odor, though. Remember? Like
that makes it quicker. Yeah, that makes it quicker.
Oh, there was some funny things about what they said, what a good person was made out of or something.
Well, actually, let's back up. Let's go back to the very beginning. Let's go back to the very beginning and we'll correct a major mistake that they made. Well, I'll let Peter take this one. Do you want to go into?
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, at the beginning, the older brother in the family seminar said, did you know it's been recently reported that the population of the world has just passed 8 billion people? On Connect, that's the app on their phone that has all their photos on and information about families. On Connect, the total number of beloved brethren has just passed 54,100. So by the grace of God, you and I have been specially selected to be in this holy fellowship in what is approximately 0.000, note there's 3 zeros there, so 0.000675% of the total world population. What a tremendous favour for all of us to be included every day. From what our beloved brother spoke of at the universal meetings, it is the only right place. So I just fact checked their calculations. I got my calculator out, and I just double checked. 8 billion has got 9 zeros.
It looks like they're missing a couple zeros.
Yeah, they did. They missed out a couple of zeros. So they're quite a bit less important than they thought they were.
This must be their one school global math course or something.
Yeah.
Huh?
Yeah, I think so.
No, there's
Yeah.
nothing wrong with the zeros. They just got the decimal point in the wrong place.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So let's just make note that instead of it being 0.000675, it's actually 0.00000067625. So
Yeah.
yes, you're much more minuscule than what you thought you were.
And I have a question for them. What is the chance of being brainwashed when you're born into a cult like the Plymouth Brethren Christian Church? I think it's about 99%.
Anyhow, I
Poor
want to go
sad
back
people.
to that quote though, only because of some of the stuff that gets rebutted within the news articles and their responses from their spokesperson. So in here, we have literally everything that we've been saying. They feel like they're the elite, the only ones that are there. And here we have it. They have been specially selected to be in this holy fellowship. Okay, we've said that before. They've rebutted that. And from where our beloved brother spoke at the universal meetings is the only one right place. So there we have it in black and white, them stating that they have been specially selected.
Yeah.
And that is the only right place.
Yeah.
Right over top of that, CULT, cult.
How are they going to keep those egos in check? Chosen out of billions of years of history of the universe, and they were just chosen at the perfect time, selected above all other humans in the entire history of the human race. Holy cow! They should be floating or something special. Maybe they should, have something about them.
I came across
Sorry, Richard, go on.
I came across a quote out of Huckleberry Finn, which is Mark Twain's famous book, which must have been written about 100 years ago. And it just reminded me of the brethren. And it says, the minister gave out his text and droned along monotonously through an argument that was so prosy that many ahead by and by began to nod. And yet it was an argument that dealt in limitless fire and brimstone and thinned the predestined elect down to a company so small as to be hardly worth the saving.
And I believe Huckleberry Finn is on their banned book list, is it not?
Well, probably.
Oh, of course.
I'm pretty sure it was.
Really? So God created 8 billion people just to save a tiny little, almost invisible snifter of them. I mean, that's not very efficient.
He's working in extremely mysterious ways. Extremely mysterious.
Yeah, and those words, the only one right place, that there's a lot of mischief has come out of those few words, including them insinuating that you might as well die as not be there.
Yeah.
And that's no joke. That's evil.
And also, if you purposely go out of that only one right place, you'll go to hell, or your salvation is
absolutely in
is on the
question
line.
was the term.
Yeah.
They had his list apparently of a couple things. I just wrote down these 3 because I found these interesting about what a good person is.
Oh yeah.
So a good person would, number 1, have purpose and goals. Why? Does goals make you good? I don't understand that
So
one.
this is what they've said in the Sydney seminar. They're talking about in the seminar. 2, a good person would be accountable. I will agree with that one. People should be accountable. Yeah, that's like basic though. I think even children know that one.
Yeah, is Bruce Hales accountable to anyone out of interest?
Yeah. Number 3, the person would be under authority and answer advice. That just sounds very culty, like straight up for a cult. And the weird thing is that nowhere do they mention altruism or being altruistic. I don't think they know what that word means. But I challenge that, and I would sum it up in, I've got one for my opinion of what a good person could follow. Try not to add any suffering to any other being. That's it.
And I think the reason why, that was a really good point that I wanted to read out was they've talked about accountability a lot in here. And I think that is the biggest place that the Plymouth Brethren Christian Church actually lacks on. There has been no accountability coming from Maple Creek. I'm going to speak from my own experience because that's what we're on here to do. There has been no accountability inside Maple Creek, none whatsoever, Bruce. Like, you have not taken accountability. So when you guys are sitting here talking about all being accountable, it's not at all. There was something that was read in here that I wanted to read out. So they were talking, and here's just a sentence I'm going to read. Someone was recounting a matter of serious evil, and it was so evident how our beloved brother recoiled as a holy man of God. What a judgment of evil these great men have. So this is Mr. John Hills. So I'm going to go back to John was in leadership when I was in and when everything was going on. I can tell you that these men do not have a good judgment of evil. They do not. If they had a good judgment of evil, Ellen Drever would not be walking the streets of Maple Creek. They would have taken ownership from his past, not just from me, but from his past, and they would be holding him accountable. And he is. Ellen Drever is probably the most evil man that I have ever encountered inside my life.
And I mean, not only that, all those young people, was it 17 young people that were thrown out for the most ridiculous reasons? John Hales and Bruce Hales were both written letters and responded to letters giving them the full details of all of that. And they, not only were they not accountable, they did nothing about it.
Yeah.
So where's the accountability? The fact is, when they talk about accountability inside the Brethren, they think in terms of someone in the Brethren being accountable to someone in a position of authority over them. What they don't understand is that accountability works ways, and that is that people in authority are also accountable to the people that they lead.
Exactly.
And that's completely absent in the Brethren. I mean, even at the local level, the local lead does things and the priests do things, and there's no accountability to the congregation.
Yeah.
So these seminars were just a load of horse crap then. Like,
yeah, it was.
Absolute zero value. I don't even think we'd be doing a podcast about it unless it was so important, unless, you know what I mean? They pretend it's so important in the church that it's important that we talk about it. But there's nothing interesting in these things.
You know what? I think the real reason why we needed to do this was because of the cry for help inside. It was the insiders that were asking. It was the insiders that were like, this is it was especially the family seminar. The family seminar, I mean, Peter, you can attest to this. That family seminar was very creepy in the sense that, I mean, if anything, it pulled out the most cult-like behavior ever in them with it all, because it was all about the great men. None of it. I found one quote where they referred to Christ. I actually wrote it down. But other than that, like, you couldn't find anything in there. They're not really referring to biblical teachings. They're not referring to just staying within the Bible. It was literally just about the ministry and about how close can you get to these great men? What are your experiences with these great men? Are you writing down your experiences with these great men? You need to be making sure that, like, you're remembering what it felt like, what was happening. Like, it just was absolutely creepy the way that they were pushing the great men onto them, not the Bible, not sitting there talking about Christ's teaching, nothing like that. It was about the great men.
Have any of you seen the movie Clockwork Orange?
No.
Okay. So that's a brainwashing movie where these doctors take a guy and try and make him, he's like a anarchist, and they put TV in front of him and try and brainwash him back to show that he's normal now. And this is literally what they're doing. They are having their members sit in front of these pre-recorded propaganda sessions. That's what they are. They're just brainwashing you through screens now, because it's easier for them to do it than have the reason. I'm trying to figure out why they didn't all go back to church right away after COVID, right? They used to go 7 days a week. Now they're still doing hybrid. Why? Because it's easier to brainwash directly through these seminars and these pre-recordings, right? Before it was Bible readings and just a regular church member reading the Bible every night. But now they can send information directly from Sydney, Australia, and just pump that fucking whatever they want.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah,
and of course, it's
point,
higher
mate.
quality brainwashing. I mean, they can get the real expert brainwashers. Well, before it was kind of filtered through the local brethren's head first. And those local guys are probably less extreme and more decent than the management. But now they can just deliver this stuff full strength without anyone diluting it.
Yeah.
That's
Go
a
ahead.
brilliant insight. Yeah.
Go ahead, Peter.
Oh, no, I think Lane's brought up a really good point. I mean, the locality I was in, I came out of 2.5 years ago. We had a group of leaders that always made sure that the readings were taken by people that would take the reading out of the latest white book, and we were always having this continual thing from Bruce Hales, what Bruce Hales is saying currently.
You could call it quality check of the propaganda.
This local quality check, but not every locality might be like that. You might have people in charge that are having more normal sort of Bible readings. So how you
might even be Christians in there, mightn't there?
Yeah, there might be more. They might be having Bible readings. And so I think what Lane says is a really good point I hadn't thought of.
I found, so I'm just going to go through some things that I highlighted here. They really used, especially John Borum. So John Borum was a presenter. And obviously people, now that it's Carmen's podcast is out now regarding her dad and Roy Simonton. And we quoted quite a bit of John Borum's speaking on there too, but I really found John Borum's to be this resurrection of the inadequacy of the Hales family. So here, I'm going to just read something. So fast forward to this is John Borum talking. Fast forward to 1985. At Mr. Simonton's suggestion was to John Hales serving in Vancouver at his first set of 3-day meetings since being reinstated to fellowship in February 1983. And there was a deep underlying prejudice against Mr. Hales because of a lack of understanding and appreciation of the commission of the commission of the Lord had given him. And this resulted in question and notes being raised about his ministry, including that very weekend of his service here in 1985. Now, strong rival influence prevailed in North America, and we were unprepared to face up to it. Beloved Mr. Bruce Hales, clearly having laid upon him by the Lord, and brought the matter to issue here in Vancouver in March 2002. Now, I was struggling with the abhorrent rejection of Mr. John Hales and the devastation that rival influences caused in North America when Mr. Bruce Hales graciously helped me to see how misrepresentation and bias had affected numbers of assembly judgments. This literally, and I've spoke to a few insiders. John Borum's talking rattled the cages of a lot of people in here. And this really got me going. When we're sitting here talking about misrepresentation and bias, are you kidding me? It just gets me so fired up on how they could sit here and use some of the words that they were using when we know 100% that these people are watching these podcasts. They're listening to these people's stories, and they have the audacity to talk about being misrepresented and having bias against John Hales. And it goes on. He talks about Mr. Bruce Hales said JSH was the truest man in the whole world. He advised me to just keep stuff out of the way. Look at the whole picture. Get rid of natural thinking and cry to the Lord for understanding. Well, here's what I'm going to tell you guys to do. Because this last couple of weeks, I'm not going to lie, have been freaking heavy for me. They have been heavy. The amount of insiders that I'm talking to and the amount of them that are literally crushing under what's happening inside there. Bruce, your father Mr. Simon, none of you guys were these truest great men. You're not. You're the farthest thing from it. You are not taking accountability. You are not listening to the young people in there. You're not listening to some of the old people in there. There's whole families that are wanting to leave. And wow, misrepresentation and bias is everywhere in there. I was talking to somebody who did allocation of the breaks, and he would purposely put, mixed hierarchy amongst them, and he knew he would get a phone call, literally them saying, I don't want those people at my house, or the people on the low hierarchy having to go to someone who's high up, canceling last minute. Like, are you kidding me? Like, this is what we're talking about. You need to deal with your own shit inside there before you start bringing up all these past blames of Mr. Hales's ministry and how he was reinstated. And I just found that John Borum, everything was your testimony depends on it. Your testimony depends on it over and over and over. I would say your testimony depends on accountability for the ex-members. Your testimony depends on you looking in that rearview mirror and taking care of the past, because the past is not gone. I've said this over and over. The past is just growing louder and louder and louder. It's there. Anyhow.
Here's my take, Cheryl, on that. You'd think that if the creator of the universe decided to pick one particular church to be his perfect church, why would it have problems on the inside? Why would people not be getting along? Why would there be people in and out and kicked out for different reasons? Wouldn't it go smoothly?
And why would it be covering up pedophiles and child abuse and every possible evil under the sun, all propagated and covered up? And why would it be getting multi-billion-dollar COVID contracts by under the table deals with dodgy politicians?
Yeah,
exactly.
John Borum, he went on to say, here's another statement. I bolded some of these statements that made me want to throw up. Let us submit to adjustment of our place in the testimony, let us submit to adjustment of our place. The place in our testimony depends on it. Our place in the testimony is a rich inheritance that money can't buy. So let's just take that specific statement right there. Why are you so fixated on making money if this rich inheritance is something money can't buy? Because to everybody else that is looking, even on the inside, looking inside, realizes that this is a completely false statement. I wanted to have Maury Povich's audio of and the lie detector said, and that's a lie. And I was going to just play it after every single statement that was a lie. But then I realized, you know what, our whole podcast would just be me pushing a button that says, and the lie detector said that was a lie.
Because the joke is, the implication of that statement, well, money can't buy it, is that everyone would flood into the brethren if only they were allowed to. They've all got their noses pressed against the glass, enviously watching them. And, if money could buy it, they would sell everything so they could join the brethren. Well, last time I went past the meeting room, the crowds around the outside weren't that thick,
You mean there's not a waiting list to get in?
Zero waiting list. Man, even a gym in a city sometimes has a waiting list if it's 1% better than another gym, right? If the Brethren Church was just a teeny bit true, even just slightly better than another church, more people would be going there. The fact that you've bred 56,000 in how many years that you've been around should be really should be an indicator how shitty your church is doing.
I mean, your average public toilet gets 1,000 times the number of visitors than the PBCC church does.
Yeah.
And smells better.
Yeah.
And the fact that they made people pay for this seminar, that is that's should be illegal. Like,
well, money could buy the seminar, apparently.
So I want to show you how, like, where it's always about the ministry. So I'm just going to go back to John Borum's because his had the most hypocrisy in it. I shouldn't say his had the most hypocrisy. There was a lot of hypocrisy in it, but his was. So he's talking about having the opportunity to attend 3-day meetings in Detroit, and John Hales and Bruce Hales were there. And, you know, experience of 18 years of age, seizing the opportunity to see these men working together was totally life-changing for him. And he goes on to say, their influence inspired committals to purity, systematically reading the ministry and managing our time. But in 1966, when JSH and WBH became discredited, so progress waned. So to the youth, I'd say once you have embraced adjustment, committed to purity, and started to make progress, don't be distracted by other influences. Your place in the testimony depends on it.
they like to threaten people with excommunication, like it's so terrible to die out of fellowship and to be out of fellowship. Well, we can.
So you see how like they refer to the ministry. They don't refer to the Bible. They don't refer to any teachings. It's the ministry, and the whole way through, it is the ministry. It is the ministry. It is the ministry. And he ends it with your place in the testimony, your rich inheritance depends on it.
I mean, I guess if the brethren want to save some money, they can skip the seminars and we'll just give them an overview a couple of weeks later. And it's all for free.
Yeah, we'll do it for
all
free.
For free. Money can't buy it. It's the free offer of salvation.
Well, these seminars are compulsory. They'll tell you they're not, but they are.
Oh, yeah.
And they've been doing these seminars for years, and I never used to. I used to always try not to go to them, and I would have my father-in-law offer to pay for it for me, because it was compulsory basically, and he was worried that if I didn't go to it, that I'd suffer in my soul. A lot of what I've heard is just the same old stuff, same old thing, and that it's just. This family seminar is just disturbing. It's mind-bending stuff and brainwashing. And
they just need to think for themselves. But the problem is they've never been able to because they don't have time to think in there. But I would say, in there, not even that I'm Christian at all, but if you read your Bible more than the ministry, you'll probably find some interesting things, like reading this same crap over and over again that they're teaching you is killing your brain cells.
Yeah, they don't tell you not to read your Bible, but they also don't suggest that much. It's all about reading the ministries.
And that's how they get around everything, right? We realize that when you go and you read the rebuttals to these news articles and news media, they're very smart with how they respond to things, right? Because they do. They don't come right out and say, oh, well, they don't advertise they have a man of God. They don't realize, they don't advertise that. But the thing is I love that we have these recordings. I love that we have this stuff in black and white. I'm going to come right out and say it. It's going to be very good for our judicial things coming up. I'm going to go right into this. Here's they say, young people today, you will have heard and seen a man of God walking into the meeting, sitting down, standing up to give a word or preach. Write down your own real impression, right? It's right there. They're literally talking about, here's their man of God.
Was fat, slurred his words, was clearly drunk, has no idea what he's talking about. Clearly hasn't read his own book.
Kept us waiting for 3 hours in an overcrowded meeting hall.
Counter snipers when there was no snipers.
My point is that I'm just trying to, we had Ann Hamilton's article come out, right? And it's just so disheartening to sit there and read her heart-wrenching story. And then they come back with the bullshit that they come back with.
Mm.
Because
Yeah,
it's just lies.
Yeah, and I'd like to refer to their rebuttal on that. That they've always said that it's the family's choice as to how much they have to do with there. Now they've upgraded that. It's the family's choice with no influence by the church. They've added that bit now. No influence by the church.
That's so dishonest.
Lie button, lie.
Yeah.
And the lie detector
Has
proved
determined
that was a lie. Oh,
You know, if you're listening and you're inside and you're worried about sinning on the outside, I'm gonna give you a cheat code. So right before you die, you just go, "Oh, please forgive me for everything." Right before you die, you're good. It's a cheat code. It's a cheat code. So you just do whatever you want.
If you're worried about sitting on the outside, I suggest if you're in a church that's lying to the media, I think by staying in that church, I suggest maybe you're sinning by staying in that church.
Yeah.
Because they're lying.
Peter, I know I quoted it on another podcast, but your comment on one of the posts it was on Fritz Petty's post, but I'm going to reiterate it again, how Bruce Hales is like 99.9% more evil than anybody out here.
Mm.
Yeah.
Oh,
So
absolutely.
true.
Yeah.
What goes on inside there, you will not encounter that out here. The evil that goes on inside there, because it's so condensed and it's sitting in such a leadership, you're not going to find that out here.
Mm. And the other thing is, for those of us outside, yes, I mean, there are people that aren't in the brethren that are evil, but we don't break bread with them. We don't have anything to do with them. We've got the liberty to choose the company we like. I don't break bread with wicked people. I don't socialize with wicked people. But if you're inside there, you're breaking bread with, socializing with wicked people all the time. You're breaking bread with Alan Drever. You're breaking bread with all these evil people in there. But just because they are technically in fellowship, that doesn't make them any the less wicked. In fact, it makes them the more wicked by your own doctrine. So where's your separation from evil?
The only thing I would push back on that, Richard, is that their idea of what evil people is actually completely ridiculous, right? Like inside, they have much more evil people than you have on the outside. And what I would say to them is drop the judgment, right? Mm. The brethren just look through the eyes of that person homeless must be evil. This person, a different race, must be evil. You know, they think like that. And it's just judgment. It's we're better than you. That's how you look at things.
I mean, someone with a beard, they got to be evil if you got a beard.
Right? Exactly. But don't tell yourself I won't sit down with an evil person. Tell yourself I won't sit down with the person that's continuing to be an asshole. No, there's no reason to do that. But I've drank with homeless people before, and they're awesome. They got crazy stories. They're really cool people. Like, there's nobody that's too evil to eat with except maybe Putin. Unless you get a stabbing chance, maybe you could hurry up the end of the war. But that's a joke. You know, I'm not suggesting violence. I can't do that. But all I'm saying is don't think about evil people and how you have to avoid them. No, have an open heart. Just look at everyone. Like my guru says, like Sadhguru, he says, learn to look at every face with the same eyes that you would look at your own mother, right? That's love. That's unity. That's not hatred and judgment and I'm better than you and, oh no, you have too much sin, I can't be near you, right? Just be loving and you'll watch loving people come near you and the hating people will stay fucking far away.
Just waiting for you to start levitating there, Lane.
Okay, so I'm gonna go into some more points that I've got written down here, and I don't even know who it was that this was saying this, so we're just gonna say one of the brothers that was speaking. He counseled, if your household is devoted to the saints for service, then material things won't become a snare. JSH looked at our accounts and insisted on all the family remaining in the office, including my wife and the younger daughters, and commented, "The Queen sitting by is a moderating influence." But I just want to go back to the material things won't be a snare. Like, and here we are dealing with Bruce and his sons who have multi-million-dollar mansions to just have for a weekend. Another point that I wanted to read out here.
So one side of their mouth comes out about, material, don't be materialistic, and out the other side comes, you need to be successful in business, and you need to have insane amounts of time management, and success equals money. It's like how do they be so hypocritical in the same sentence?
Yeah. Okay, here I found it. Okay, so I don't have written down who was saying this because I was just copying and pasting at this moment. I think 3 points I remember writing down was to staying in the clear. I'm keeping short accounts with my father, so staying close to my father. And then my third point was staying close to my grandfather. Certainly didn't want to lose any connection I had with him, especially throughout my whole life, but in those critical periods throughout the COVID where I sat next to him on Zoom. And so here's what I want to bring up. It's very important to be close to your dad and your grandfather. Some of us were denied that opportunity. Some of us were denied that opportunity very, very young, when my dad would get picked up for priestly visits, taken out for hours upon end, and then come back, drop back off, and he wouldn't speak to us for weeks. So again, I'm just putting out the hypocrisy of the past and how, yes, this is very important, but how many people are you denying that connection with? There's hundreds of us out here that are denied that access to their father and grandfather.
Mm. That what he just said there is typical Hales unempathetic speaking. I can remember being really pissed off hearing Gareth Hales speak up, in the middle of COVID. He's saying, "I can't wait." He was speaking on a seminar. He said, "I can't wait for COVID to be over when we can start traveling around the world again." I thought, "Oh, you asshole! Most presidents can't travel around the world." I mean, they just don't think of the other people.
Yeah. Clueless, utterly clueless.
Yeah.
But I do have to think that by them referring over and over and over and over, I mean, we should have counted how many times they said the word "the great men." It was over and over and over and over. They really wipe out, they really wipe out the word Jesus. They wipe out the word Christ. They wipe out everything. And instead, they've replaced it with this title of the great man. And so now everybody is just looking up at these great men as if they are talking to Jesus.
Mm. Yeah, I noticed that, Cheryl, and I wonder if it's on purpose even.
Yeah, 100%. Bruce knows what he's doing.
Yeah, I first of all, I thought, well, it's just the way it is. It's the way they think. Then I thought maybe it's actually on purpose as a brainwashing exercise.
Yeah.
Oh, very much. Sure it is.
And they start, I'm going to read this. Our beloved brother said once, so this is in the Sydney seminar again. Everything that I'm talking about is from the Sydney seminar. Our beloved brother said once, if you get sorted out, commit yourself to reading the ministry, you can grow 6 years in 6 months. The great men have also said it's not how horses fall, it's how it gets up again. To conclude, we've got a couple of takeaways for you to note. 1, have implicit trust in these great men and everything that they're setting on. Commit yourself to reading the ministry. It's not commit yourself to reading the Bible. It's commit yourself to reading the ministry.
Can I read you a quote there from the Bible?
Yeah.
Now, this will be of interest to the brethren inside, because this is a scripture that they haven't heard for many, many years. And this is from 1 Timothy 6. It says, "But piety with contentment is great gain. For we have brought nothing into the world, it is manifest that neither can we carry anything out. But having sustenance and covering, we will be content with these. But those who desire to be rich fall into temptation and a snare, and many unwise and hurtful lusts, which plunge men into destruction and ruin. For the love of money is the root of every evil, which some, having aspired after, have wandered from the faith and pierce themselves with many sorrows. But thou, O man of God, flee these things and pursue righteousness, piety, faith, love, endurance, meekness of spirit. Anyone recognize the description of a man of God from the book of Timothy?
It's
Yes,
they're so far from Christianity.
I don't remember hearing Bruce Hales read that scripture in there up until the
I'm
time
sure
I
you
left.
didn't.
I don't think he ever read that one.
Probably not in the latest edition.
So I'm going to add to that with something that they talked about in the Sydney seminar. So in conclusion, don't waste time your day in time, don't waste food, cut out unnecessary extravagant living, don't waste money.
What?
JT often quoted regarding riches, indeed, it made to the self wings and it flieth away. So Bruce, Gareth, Dean, all you guys that are having these multi-million-dollar homes, this was on your Sydney seminar. So this is somebody speaking this. Cut out unnecessary extravagant living.
Oh, okay. So IKEA is okay instead of a Range Rover, and 1 million is okay for a house instead of 8 million.
Yeah. And then turn around with that extra money and you can help the poor people in your congregation that are struggling. People that
And the ones that are going to the food bank
behind your backs. Let's find these people. And if you're very compassionate and coming from the heart, these people want to come to you and say, hey, I'm struggling. You know, my business isn't doing as good as what you set out in all these seminars for everybody to do. Yeah, hand over some of that money to them.
I think the brethren have gotten such a skewed view of what is riches, right? Because I was talking to an insider not that long ago, and they said something about, I was like, oh, so they must, be in nice houses now. He's like, oh, houses are okay. He's like, brethren all used to live in shit houses. And I was like, what? No, they didn't. You now go to so many rich houses that you think that those old houses were crap. No, they weren't. They were perfectly normal, fine houses, upper middle class, actually. And it's just now that they're around that all the time. I even talked to my grandfather not that while ago, and I said something about Gareth Hale's multi-million-dollar mansion. He says, not a mansion, it's just it's a house. What? It's not a mansion? Like, how is that? You know what I mean? But their minds are just skewed.
And I think that happens. I mean, wouldn't you say that happens with those slow changes, right? And before you know it, your ideals and goals and like how you perceive the world you're living in is all of a sudden something different. You don't know how it came there because it was a slow transition. I mean, Bruce Hales is a master of brainwashing. Out of all of these great men, I'd have to say he probably is the one that has been the best brainwasher ever, because he's been able to do it and encompass so much of their lives, right? He has literally taken over their entire lives financially. Like every little area, he has found a way for it to revolve back to him.
Yeah, and the funny thing about it is he talks about con men too, Cheryl.
Yeah.
Like several times in his ministry, he talks about con men and not being taken by con men. And that's
sneaky bastard.
That's just part of the thing. It's just like a serial killer turning up at a crime scene where he murdered someone.
It was very interesting because I've been trying to write down, my history of my life. And when you actually come to write something down, you get a lot more insight. And I realized that when I was a child, the brethren really only, the amount of your time that they used up was really limited to church. Okay, it was every day, 5 times on Sundays. But in terms of your education and your work life, they had very limited influence in that area. Yeah, there were certain jobs you couldn't do, but you went to a regular school. You worked for non-brethren businesses, or even if your dad had his own business, the brethren weren't interfering with that. You were independent. It was autonomous. But think of what the change is now. Now, growing up in the brethren, they control your entire education. They also control your entire work life, which means that unless you're actually asleep, you're under Bruce Hale's direct control.
Mhm.
That's the
Very good
extent
point.
to which their influence has spread in the course of 40, 50 years. And that's all been done as a kind of a gradual process.
But I'd have to differ with that, with saying that they're even during their sleep, they're under his control. Through this seminar, it's reiterated over and over the importance of starting your day with these writings and ending your day with these writings, right? Of the great men. And so, right, you literally are falling asleep in this control of what you just wrote about. And I mean, anybody who has done therapy will know the power of writing stuff down. It's super important, right? It's, if you want to change behaviors, it's not about just sitting and having talk therapy. It's about going back, writing things down, because it does this brain connection, the synapses that happens when you're writing stuff down. It sticks with you. So Bruce is very smart to bring something like this up with having them do all this writing about the great men. Well, absolutely. Because then it just gets more ingrained inside them about, this is who we should be giving our thanks to, is all these great men. Throughout the seminar, you've got this whole idea of how they give this time management from first thing in the morning to at night, right down to the sleep. So I'm just going to read this. It's to the way that these great men value every minute. Mr. John, you had some experience with some advice, didn't you? On the time you start the morning, you could share this. So some of this isn't audible. And he says, yes, I did. Our beloved brother exhorted me when it's inaudible. He spoke to me and he said he felt guilty. He was still in bed after 6 a.m. in the morning. This is beloved JSH. And he went on to say about sleep. He said 6 hours for a man, 7 hours for a woman, and 8 hours for a pig. Being purposeful would involve discipline, wouldn't it, Ben? And then they go on and talk about, one will get up early, go for a run, and then get into the word of God. 15 minutes, they said in the last seminar, 15 minutes, make it 20. I reckon if you're 30 or 40, it should be half an hour. And the person that said this wouldn't be able to jog 10 feet. And I guess what really frustrated me over this, again, it comes back down to accountability, the hypocrisy. My suggestion to you, my goal for you guys for 2023 would be, when you're giving out your advice, I would make sure that the advice you're giving out is something that you're practicing, right? Yeah. So that literally should be something. If you aren't running every morning, then you shouldn't be giving out the advice that you're telling everybody else that they should get up at some awful hour of the morning and go for a run.
Also, isn't there something horribly misogynist about that statement? There's sort of the implication that women are somehow inferior. Yeah, if you took it literally, it's, well, women are somewhere halfway between a man and a pig. But I've got a very young baby here, and I'd say my wife gets away with an awful lot less sleep than I do. It's just that insidious the whole time mental hierarchy that men are better than women. Yeah. Women are somehow weaker and inferior, and then there's all those terrible people outside that are barely human. Wow, go look in the mirror, look at your fat ugly self, Bruce, and ask yourself whether you're really superior to the entire rest of humanity, or whether you're just an overweight alcohol soaked no, I won't say that word. It's a very rude word I was going to say, but yeah, have a look.
Yeah, that's good. I love it when Richard gets going.
Yeah.
So I'm going to read something to you all. And what I want, when I say this whole statement that came from the Sydney seminar out of another brother's mouth, I want you to take, and I want you to use it as your totem. I want you to use it as your mantra. I want you to use it as your tool that you carry in your back pocket every time you make yourself the master of your own destiny. So it goes on. So it just shows that I guess the point of taking the initiative and being proactive, there's often the quote that you're the master of your own destiny. So it's exactly what you're just saying. He certainly encouraged younger people to step up, and there's some inaudible stuff there, empowering younger people to take ownership, especially the younger age. So for all those people that have contacted me and you're unhappy, You have your permission. It's written right here. You get to be the master of your own destiny. So you don't want to work for your family? You don't have to work for your family. You want to go and work at the cafe down the street? You get to go work at the cafe down the street because you are the master of your destiny. You get whatever makes you fly. It's literally, you've completely been given permission from the Sydney Seminar 2023.
Yep. There's some good stuff in there.
Mm-hmm.
I'm warming to this.
Maybe I was wrong. Maybe the seminar did have some good nuggets in there. And that is, I love that though. Make your own destiny. Start small. Get a job. Yeah.
He obviously didn't mean it in the way that I am presenting it, but
I think the original quote was that we should be masters of our own destiny. In other words, like the brethren should be able to be masters of their own destiny. But yeah, apply it to the individual, because that's exactly what the brethren have stolen from you, is your own personal autonomy, your own personal power of decision and action. So I love it. Be the master of your own destiny.
And you know what? Take their advice about the goals. But for once, just make the goal have nothing to do with business or money. And then find out what your real goals are. And I guess, you know what? Make them outside the brethren. Woo, be risky. I already gave you the cheat code. You know, if you commit a terrible sin, don't worry, you can confess. All gone. Whoop, whoop, all good. So seriously, have fun if you're in there and you heard this seminar. Do what Cheryl says, be the master of your own destiny. Write down some goals at night. Don't write down stupid ministry bullshit. Write down things you want to accomplish in your life that aren't business related or money. That's what you should write down at night.
Another piece of advice I would give you, this is a personal observation. There was an old brother, I probably mentioned this before, there's an old brother local with me who'd done everything right his whole life, never been out of fellowship. He sort of got to the level where he took 1 or 2 fellowship meetings even at one stage. He always backed the right horse when the man of God changed. He'd read all the ministry. He knew his Bible inside out. He was miserable.
That is the best way to put it. The best picture. There you go. Oh.
Yeah. Okay. Do you have notes there, Peter, that you wanna dive in?
No, you carry on.
Okay.
Carry on.
Okay, so I want to go into this whole the time thing. I'm going to read a quote where the one part that I found where they use the word Christ, and this is what they relate it to. There's an excellent quote in a preaching of our beloved brother. It's in August the 3rd, 2008, and he said, "It's a wonderful moment in your life when you're prepared to account for your time 24 hours a day, 7 days a week." And he said, just consider it. Are you doing it? Start doing it today. Account for your time. Account for your time to Christ. And I was like, hallelujah. They just brought the word Christ into this. But I mean, it's based on time. Anyhow, so it goes on. So it's so important to be accountable for our time. The third character is to be someone that's under authority and answering to advice. So we're going back to the 3 things that make up a good person. What do you think, Mr. Dave? Every young man should make sure that they respect authority and understand authority is quite a thing. And just take the advice you're given. Someone likely gives you advice. So I'm sitting here and I was like, okay, well, if they're open to advice, I've got advice. I have a lot of advice. A lot of advice. I seriously, just sit down and offer some compassion to these people who are no longer wanting to be underneath your thumb, Bruce. There's a lot of people that are not wanting to be underneath your rule.
I want to say something on the authority. Like he loves to talk about bringing people under authority, right? And being under authority is all good and everything. In my opinion, only weak people need authority. Do you need someone to tell you what to do and how to walk and how to talk, how to eat your life, how to eat, how to live your life? If you need that, then you are incompetent in life, right? Why do you need an authority figure to direct you?
Tell you how to think even. Yeah.
Exactly. Think for yourself. Be your own authority. You shouldn't need fucking Streamline 3 to stop you from looking up real things on the internet. If you can't look up disgusting things and you can't stop yourself, then you need therapy. Like we all do.
Therapy's a good thing. Yeah. Okay, so I'm just going to go through my list of what I put through here again. It's more about money. And I think our beloved brother was making a point that you put everything into it and you don't waste money and don't borrow any more than you have to. Be a timely word. This current juncture with it, the way the interest rates are going, do you think? So again, completely hypocrisy of,
they're supposed to be talking about church stuff and they're talking about the interest rates. And wait, was this during the family seminar?
This is during the family one. Yeah.
So this is supposed to be about family.
Okay. And now I'm going to go to another quote on.
Yeah, but just on that one, there's a theme here, and that is Bruce Hales wants the brethren to make as much money as they can, but he wants them to spend as little as possible, because where does the surplus go?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. And so when we talk about, okay, that there's this man of God, there's this elect vessel, and they come back and be like, there's no hierarchy and there's none of that in here, right? We're all just one hierarchy. Mainstream Christian church, right? So here's a quote, and this was on the Sydney side of the family seminar. So who knows which Hales was speaking. And they say, but some people have committees. We don't have to have a committee in Sydney because he's the committee. Yeah, we should probably think about that. He's fair. He looks after you. JSH was definitely in charge. He was running the show as he should have been.
I thought they didn't have a hierarchy, they said.
So I'm just going to remind everybody that we do have these recordings and I have no issue using them when I go, when we need to get into the judicial part of things. So keep them coming.
Yeah. Keep condemning yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah. You say JSH was running the show, and yet for at least a year, maybe more than that, you wouldn't let anybody call JSH because you were intercepting calls. So was JSH running the show, or was the guy that was intercepting all the calls and giving all the answers running the show?
And how would you know that,
This
Carmen?
is nice.
Did you try and get a hold of JSH?
Yeah, actually, I got a hold of him.
You did get a hold of him, didn't you?
I did. Yeah.
And then he just gave you a sob story and never followed through on it.
No, actually, he gave me an answer. He said he had never been involved in that matter at all. But then, of course, Bruce had to come back and write a 1.5-page letter about why his father might have said that and what he really might have meant by what he said. It's rather comical, actually. But yeah, so it shows, was JSH or was BDH running the show?
Mm-hmm.
But what's nice
is if you can't get a hold of the man running the show and his son is intercepting, who's really running the show?
Mm.
Yeah.
They really talked about the two of them. Like there was a few referrals to John and Bruce and people witnessing them working together and how great it was. And
well, he said there, Mr. Bruce Hales said JSH was the truest man in the whole world.
Bruce Hale's daddy
I would
issues
say that's
know
daddy
no
worship.
limits.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's more like daddy worship than anything.
It is daddy worship. That's a good word. I like that phrase. Daddy worship. It's very creepy daddy worship too.
Yeah, but it's also completely fake because he didn't really have a great regard for him. He took over and brought his dad under his influence as soon as he could and bypassed him, set him aside, made his decisions for him. And now he sits back and praises him.
Yeah, I think Bruce was actually running the show from about 95 onwards. When I think John Hales had a bit of a breakdown about 95 and was actually on antidepressants.
Yeah.
From about 95 till he died. And Bruce Hales was running the scene. And Bruce used to hide stuff from him. I mean, that's what the whole Bob Thorncroft letter thing was about.
Yeah.
Was Bruce Hales hiding stuff from his father.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a couple of sisters in the interchange, unmarried sisters, who used to go and help at Jim Fear's house in Leicester when they had the universal meetings there. And that was where John Hales and Bruce Hales stayed. And I think the last time John Hales was there, John Hales was extremely weak and he'd kind of been dragged there. And they told me, these sisters, that they'd hear Bruce shouting at his father in the bedroom. And then eventually they would come out and they were dragging John Hales along kind of with his legs dangling and under each armpit. And he was just completely under Bruce's control. And Bruce later said, because he realized people had heard him shouting at his father, "Oh, I was just getting the devil out of the room," or something. But there was no respect. There was no respect for the old man.
No.
He was just there to. He was just there. They just needed him to stay in power and to make sure Bruce got the succession. That was the only use they had for the guy. And I'd be very curious to know. I have a kind of suspicion that maybe it's going the same way with Bruce, and maybe Dean and Gareth are actually running the show, and Bruce is kind of pensioned off in a, semi-inebriated state, and they keep him locked in the basement. But if it hasn't happened already, it's almost inevitable that it will.
I will
watch this space.
I would really enjoy a power struggle actually after Bruce passes away, the inevitable death. Before the rapture. I know it's crazy, but it's going to happen. And when he does, I think there's going to be a power struggle, definitely.
Yeah, we could make a fortune selling ammunition to both sides, couldn't we?
Right? Oh my goodness, this will be fun.
Well, Bruce had his mom under his thumb, because literally when I called there that day, I asked to speak to Mr. Hales, and she said, "Oh dear, well, Bruce just left here. Would you like me to try and get a hold of him? Would you like me to chase him down?" And I was like, no, I'd like to speak to Mr. John Hales.
So
she said, I don't know. Let me go ask him and see if he's well enough. And I could hear him from the other room when she asked him, and he said, "Of course, put her through." So this crap about my father's not well enough it literally was crap.
But
I could hear him from the other room. And when he spoke to me, he was as clear as day. And I asked him about specific people, about a specific situation, and he said, "I have been told nothing, and I made no judgment in that case." And then Bruce wrote a 1.5-page letter explaining why his father might not have known what his father was saying. Really? But yeah, John Hales was not crazy. He had no dementia. He was clear as a bell.
Well, I think the evidence is right when you said how she said, "Oh yeah, he just left. Mr. Bruce just left." She automatically went to thinking of him, right? So that shows
because she was whipped into thinking that all the calls had to go to Bruce.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's interesting because what goes around comes around. So maybe
I know, and he's in that predicament.
Bruce can't do shit right now.
I mean, he's in the predicament right now. Or maybe he's had the heart surgery if he's having heart surgery, and who's taking over for him but his sons.
The heart surgery at the dry out clinic. Yeah.
Well, and the funny part in this situation is the brother had come to meeting and made several statements in the meeting. We were told by Mr. Hales to do this. And so, of course, when Mr. Hales said, "I knew nothing of it," he was sent, and then Mr. Hales said, "Sit down with them and sort it out." And we said, "Well, there's tapes of the meeting." And Mr. Hales said, "Sit down with them, listen to the tapes." And when we went to get the tapes, the brother had run off with them. Yeah. And the tapes never reappeared for 5 years. And at the 5-year mark, the two brothers came back to us all the way down here in Tennessee and said, "Indeed, what you said was true." 5 years it took them to dig out tapes to prove that what we had said was true. And that's
so that they had attributed all these statements to Mr. Hales, while in fact he had never even been told about the matter.
He had never even been told about it. Exactly. So.
And these are the people we're supposed to trust and look up to.
Yeah.
And I'm going to
when Mr. Hales is in charge, it's actually Bruce. So now when it's Bruce Hales in charge, it makes you wonder.
And I mean, when you think
Gareth,
of how
was
it
it
was
me?
in there, how it is in there, if the brother who takes the lead quotes, "Oh, Mr. Hales has said this," no one would dream of questioning it. You just go and do it. And it may be that he hasn't, he's just lying. He's just saying that because he knows everyone will believe him.
Unless you knew the true Mr. Hales. And if
Yeah.
you knew the true Mr. Hales, he would say, don't put my name on it. So
Well,
as soon
exactly,
as
yeah.
you heard
Yeah.
them come to meeting and say, Mr. Hales told us to, you knew it
Yeah.
wasn't true.
Yeah.
Because Mr. Hales himself was actually very precise about that. If you took some advice from him, he would say, I will tell you this, but don't use my name. Don't put my name to it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Covering his tracks.
Well, yeah. Yeah, there's
What were you
that
gonna
side
say,
of it as
Peter?
well.
Yeah. So maybe, well, of course, there's more than one Mr. Hales. When they say Mr. Hales, yeah.
True.
Yeah. Maybe the guy's kind of milkman was called Mr. Hales, and they used to quote him.
Yeah. And I mean, now there's Mr. Gareth and Mr. Dean and Mr. Charles and Mr. Cameron, and
Yeah.
there's a whole host
Yeah,
of
they're
them.
bre-
But I
they're
guess
breeding-
they're all.
They're breeding like flies.
So it brings up the question: what's Gareth and Dean, and what are they all hiding from their dad? Perhaps their dad wasn't supposed to find out about the holiday house.
Yeah.
Yeah. I wanted to end with a statement here that was very potent in the whole Sydney seminar. So leads on to another critical characteristic of an effective and efficient person, that they're accountable. What remains with me is to be accountable and answerable to every moment of your life. So Maple Creek, sorry, I'm going back there because it's just frustrating the crap out of me right now. Yeah, Ellen, you have a lot to be accountable for.
Yeah.
And the leaders that are there taking should be holding you accountable. And I'm not just talking and this is just not even Maple Creek. It's all of the stories that have come forward. There has to be some sort of accountability. So I guess my biggest thing, when the insiders came to me about the Sydney seminar, and especially the family one, which is why we focused on the family one. So many of them are realizing that they're in a cult. But it's not just about, you can't just leave, right? There's a process. And I have to say that this year that's what we're focusing on. We're focusing on how to help you leave, where to get you a landing pad. Yes, we're doing these podcasts, but it's more than that. And so I just want you to all know that there is more going on in the background to help you have a landing pad and to help you get out of the situations that you're in. And if they won't be accountable, we will be accountable.
Make 2023 your year that you seriously put together a plan to leave the Plymouth Brethren Christian Church.
Yeah.
And be a master of your own destiny.
Yeah. I had a really good talk with an insider. Was it yesterday or the day before? And it was a really, really good talk. Very well thought out. And somebody who gave me an insight onto what these people need. Right. And so I think that is definitely going to be one of my own personal goals this year, is to make sure that we're really listening to the insiders that are contacting us and making sure that they have what they need to make the transition. Because it's not an easy transition when you're coming out from something that is that and you're so indoctrinated to not think for yourself. The females have so much guilt for standing up for themselves, right? The tiniest little thing of standing up for themselves, you immediately go to guilt because you're not taught how to do that. You're always under the thumb of another male. So yeah, the Sydney seminar was a bunch of bullshit. It was a bunch of hypocrisy.
Very expensive bullshit.
And very expensive bullshit.
I mean, you can get manure for, I don't know, $50 a ton. And how much have you paid for?
And it just really shows. It really shows to the length that they are controlling every aspect of their lives in there. I mean, it was the perfect submission we needed. I mean, it just is, everything's in black and white. It's audio recorded. I mean, I know you tell people not to record them, but it's okay. You know,
They did.
Yeah.
The free world.
Yeah, you've only got to repent and it's all gone. You know?
What's sad, what's funny is that they listened to us and they didn't listen to you. You know, we got lots of recordings.
Yeah,
Lots
you
of
can
recordings.
repent about listening to us as well, you know.
They listen to you, Bruce, just as well as you listen to your father.
Well, we're more popular, Bruce. We're more popular.
Uh,
I don't know.
I'm just wondering
Anyhow.
what's the next year's seminar going to be like? I mean, how are they going to?
I can tell you what it's going to be like.
Up next year.
It's going to be exactly the same as the previous 20 seminars. These things are just recycled, aren't they?
Yeah, well,
And there's nothing new in them. It's just the same old bullshit they were talking about 30 years ago.
You know, somebody did ask me though, that isn't a part of, not an ex-member, a part of the PBC, what the system days are. Peter, can you explain to our listeners and viewers what when we refer to the system days, what those were?
Yeah, well, so Bruce Howells Senior, who is John Howells' brother. So John Howells was Bruce Howells Jr., the Bruce we talk about. His father was John Howells. He had a brother called Bruce. In the 60s, they became very popular. It was at a time when JT Jr., who was the leader at the time, was in hospital, apparently drying out from alcohol abuse. And they became like the worldwide poster boys. They were taking meetings. They were pushing high achieving back then, and they were pushing reading ministry a lot and making money a lot.
Time management was their big
Sorry?
thing, wasn't it?
Time
management. Yeah.
Time management was the term. That's right.
Yeah.
And they were both, especially Bruce Howells, was treating brethren very badly and humiliating brethren, and a lot of arrogance went on. And I listened to recordings in 2020 during the COVID times when the meetings were being Zoomed. They were playing recordings. And I listened to some recordings from those times. And they weren't full-on meetings about business, but I did listen to John Hales speaking back then when he was, I think I worked there, he was 42, and he was very abrupt and rude, very cocky and arrogant, and he spoke very rudely to an older brother. So that was the sort of men they were. They traveled together around the world, and they would do things in a meeting like stand a brother up in the meeting and humiliate him in front of everyone. They would ask him how much he earned, and they would humiliate him. They'd say, well, he was not giving enough away, or he was earning too little, or he was wasting his time, or whatever. And then that continued in the houses. They would treat people, including sisters, wrong in the house. They would sometimes criticize the food or speak rudely to them. And when JT Jr. came out of hospital, or wherever he was drying out, he took issue with them, and the brethren withdrew from them. I don't know if he meant for them to be withdrawn from, but that's what the brethren did. And they both came back into fellowship, and they both wrote apology letters to the brethren, which are available. The brethren don't publish them, obviously, but they are available.
There's also a transcript of the care meeting in which they were withdrawn from, which includes a lot of quotes from them. Maybe we should put that up on the Facebook page.
Yeah, I think that'd be good.
Very interesting.
To publish it. Yeah.
And it's clear from the transcript that the brother who was leading in Sydney, who was kind of doing the withdrawing process, had discussed it extensively with JT Jr. before. He kept referring back to it, if he's to be believed. But and JT Jr. made very strong marks in printed ministry about them. They called the distress that they had caused to the brethren and so on.
Yeah.
So
that transcript of that care meeting is actually really important, and Bruce would hate for that to become public. And I think it might even be worthwhile having a podcast on it.
Yeah,
Because
and
in
maybe
that transcript,
we can attach it to this podcast too. If I,
well, in that transcript, John Hales admits to doing serious wrong. He admits to lying to JT Jr. He actually says in there that he lied to JT Jr. And yet Bruce Hales maintains his father did absolutely nothing wrong through that time.
John Hales also admits to thinking that his brother was more important than JT Jr.
That's right, yeah, and those sort of things.
Yeah.
So that's what the system days were.
Yeah.
In a nutshell.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I was meaning to get that explained because I've had it asked a few times. Okay, well, does anybody have anything else to add here?
No, I don't think so.
Yeah. I just want to let the insiders know we hear you. We hear you
loud and clear.
Yeah. And we got you. And in whatever way we can. And sometimes we can't always get back to everybody right away, but eventually we do. We're creating teams. we need more people on the teams. But yeah. Okay, well, thanks for everyone for joining us today. And until next time, we will see you all later.
Okay.
Much love to you.
To share your story or be a guest on the show, email info.getalife@proton.me.